Hello and welcome to the London Games. I'm John.
And I'm Jay. Isn't it great to be here, John?
It is a fabulous experience. Today we have the 100-meter first day of heats.
Very exciting race. And of course, all the attention goes to Usain Bolt, former or world record holder as it is now. Let's go down and meet the contestants.
And in lane 1, we have the green Teletubby. Look at his face. He's lean, he's mean, and he's green. In lane 2, all the way from Texas, we have the crazy cowboy. He's ready, his guns are blazing. He's surely a hopeful in this one. And in lane 3, we have the world's fastest man, Usain Bolt. All the way from the yellow brick road, we have the Tin Man. He's greased up and he's ready to go, ladies and gentlemen.
And in lane 5, from Czechoslovakia, Sergei Romokov.
Painful. Heard the pop up here, John.
Yeah, it looked like a possible hamstring injury.
Hamstring injury? Look, maybe a type 1?
For you, the audience, our learning objectives are 1. Be able to identify and explain 4 main causes of type 1 hamstring strains. 2. Be able to identify and explain 4 preventative techniques to avoid type 1 hamstring strains. But do you as the audience know what a type 1 hamstring strain is?
No, I don't know. No, I don't know the causes.
No, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Hi, I'm Dr. A. And I'm Dr. B. And today our patient is a sprinter who suffered a type 1 hamstring strain. So can you quickly describe the incident?
Last part of my race, I just heard a pop and went down and crawled across the finish line.
Have you ever suffered a hamstring injury before?
Never in my life.
Well, what you have here is a type 1 hamstring strain that accounts for 50% of all injuries in sprinters. Type 1 strains often occur in the long head of the bicep femoris, just distal to the muscle tendon junction. As you may know, many sprinters are required to generate maximum force and explosive movement to achieve high speed, so the injury is common. Dr. B is going to quickly go over some anatomy of the hamstring group to give you a better understanding.
As you can see here, the hamstring runs down the back of the leg and consists of 3 muscles: the semitendinosus, the semimembranosus, and biceps femoris. They begin at the bottom of the pelvis near the ischiotuberosity, crossing the knee joint, and end at the lower leg. Hamstring muscle fibers join with the connective tissue of the hamstring tendons and assist in leg extension and eccentric muscle movement.
He just mentioned eccentric muscle contraction. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
And during eccentric contraction, the muscle lengthens and functions as a brake to decelerate knee extension and oppose powerful contraction of the quadriceps. This eccentric contraction generates high intrinsic forces within the hamstring where injury is likely to occur, especially if there is a muscle imbalance between quads. So do you know what causes type 1 hamstring strains?
No.
Well, although the literature is constantly proposing different causes of hamstring strains, we want to focus on 4 common causes in an effort to prevent such an injury from reoccurring. Number 1 would be HQ ratio. Number 2, muscle fatigue. Number 3, previous injury. And number 4, inadequate warm-up and or rehabilitation.
So now, for a participation activity, get into groups of maybe 4 or 5 people and try to identify prevention techniques for each one of those causes. So now, for our first cause, the HQ ratio, let me explain. The HQ ratio is the strength between the hamstrings and quadriceps. Either muscle group can be strengthened to change this ratio by either concentric, the quads, or eccentric, the hamstrings. Training. In the study conducted by Young and al., a ratio of less than 0.6 increased your risk of more than 17 times for a hamstring injury. So for our second major cause, previous injury. I know you're keen to beat Tin Man and Usain Bolt, but it's crucial that you properly rehab and regularly stretch. In a study by John Hagen et al. Demonstrated sprinters who have had an injury have significantly tighter hamstrings and commonly relapse before they are not fully rehabilitated. In other words, they train with tight hamstrings and are more susceptible to injury. The study showed that once you have an injury, you're 30 to 35% more likely to re-injure the muscle.
So how was your warm-up?
Pretty general, could be better.
Well, sprinters who don't warm up properly have an inadequate rehabilitation have tighter hamstrings than control groups. A tendency to relapse is that the muscle is not fully rehabilitated and competes with tight muscles. So decreased hamstring flexibility is suggested to be one of the major predisposing factors.
Though the evidence isn't super strong, it has been suggested that muscle fatigue is a cause. In a study by Peterson et al., it demonstrated that sprinters in 65% of the injuries suffered a type 1 hamstring strain in the 3/4 through the race. Fatigue muscles are able to absorb less energy and therefore aren't able to stretch to the same degree as a rested hamstring muscle.
So it's to my understanding that this injury occurred in the preseason. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, don't be surprised, because in a study conducted by Young and al., they suggested that the incidence of injuries were significantly higher at the beginning of the season. A study of 40 athletes suggested 60% of hamstring injuries occurred in the first 100 hours of exposure.
So how long am I going to be out for?
Well, that's a very good question. Although the evidence is very conflicting based on your age and your past history, I would say about 30 weeks. However, in a study by HKIN et al. Demonstrated that sprinters were typically away for about 30 to 34 weeks.
Well, we don't want this to happen again. After rehabilitation, what can we do for prevention?
Well, prevention is the key in avoiding and strengthening the hamstrings. And I want you to see a good friend of mine and an ex-Marine, Strider.
So Striker, should I do any stretches or warm up first before we get going?
A recent review by Heiderscheid found that there's an inconclusive relationship between stretching and warm-up and preventing hamstring injuries. However, some authors, such as Hittag and Henderson, have found that there is a positive correlation between high volume of static stretching and preventing hamstring injuries. Try this out for a dynamic hamstring stretch before you go. And something like this as a passive stretch after and in between workouts. Make sure you have a neutral spine position, hinging over at your hips and stretching your hamstring in that manner. Since the American College of Sports Medicine recommends stretching and warm up for athletes before and after exercise, I'll recommend it as well, even though there's inconclusive hamstring evidence.
So, what kind of exercises should we do here?
We'll start with some eccentric hamstring exercises to balance out the concentric quadricep, eccentric hamstring imbalance that you might have. Nordic hamstring drops. Grab onto my ankles. Ankles supported, hips up nice and tall, neutral spine. Lower yourself down to the floor. 6 to 8 seconds on the way back up, and take it nice and easy. Repeat again 6 to 8 times. Next option, hamstring walk. Pop yourself up into a bridge. Walk your legs out forward. Relax. Try and take about 6 to 8 seconds while you're walking out. Repeat 6 to 8 times. These exercises are good for your hamstring prevention because hamstring injuries occur on the eccentric phase of the swing gait. So we're going to be strong in that phase.
So, Striker, we've been hearing lots about these lumbo-pelvic exercises. Maybe you could help us out. What's the deal?
As the good doctors told you, tight hip flexors can contribute to anterior pelvic tilt, which can predispose you to hamstring injury. So let's do a hip flexor stretch. Knee down, lean forward. Make sure your torso's up nice and tall, hands off your knees. Hold it for about 3 to 4 seconds every time, and relax, come back and do it again. Do 6, 2 sets of 6. That will do you good. The other aspect with lumbopelvic area, right in here, is you want to have good neuromuscular control. So, as Beryl demonstrated, sport-specific exercises are really helpful for this when it comes to preventing hamstring injuries. So for a sprinter, make sure you continue doing quick starts, fall starts, exercises like high knees, and wall-supported running.
I got the quickest start.
So like this. mimicking a running sport-specific motion with a neutral spine supported against the wall. Make sure your spine is neutral, or I'm coming to your house. And you never want Strider in your house.
Well, I totally understand now.
That information was awesome, now I know.
Thanks, I've learned a lot about hamstring prevention.
Thanks! Now I know the 4 main causes.